1 Samuel 4, 12 through 22. Something awful happened in our last lesson. What awful happened? In fact, it was more than one thing. Several awful things happened. They lost. Who is they? The Israelites. And to whom do they lose? Yes, the armies of the Philistines. Okay, the armies of the Philistines. Is that the only bad thing that happened? No. Eli's sons died in battle, didn't they? Okay, which two sons are they? Hophni and Phinehas, okay? Both in line possibly for the high priesthood, and yet now they're gone, aren't they? Okay? Had God prophesied that they would die? Oh yes, He had prophesied that they would die. And it just gets worser, doesn't it? It just gets worse. We've got an army who has been beaten in battle. We have the high priest's sons who have now died, and something even more atrocious has happened. What is that? The Ark of God has been taken captive. Okay? And that's where we ended our study last week. Okay? The Ark of God had been taken in battle. All right. Trying to get everybody to get these handouts. This is the most chaotic time of class. There we go. All right. I divided 1 Samuel 4, 12 through 22 into only two sections. Who has a good outline of that? Ought to be a lot easier. You don't have 4 or 5 today, just 2. Okay? Anybody want to give their outline? Okay, Kevin?
Eli died, glory departed.
All right. Eli died, the glory departed. That's pretty easy, isn't it? Okay? Pretty simple. Anybody else? All right.
Bad news and realization of reality.
Bad news and realization of reality. Yes, good. Anybody else want to give their outline? Are you bold enough? Courageous enough?
Mine was a little more detailed.
All right.
Hears the news of Israel's defeat and dies.
Eli hears the news of Israel's defeat and dies.
And the birth of Ichabod and death of his mother.
The birth of Ichabod and the death of his mother. Don't ever name your child Ichabod. Don't do that. Okay? Just don't do that. I have this one. The report of the battle and the rule of Phinehas' wife. Okay, so let's go through this and let's study this particular text. From what tribe did the man who was a messenger from the battle belong? From the tribe of Benjamin. Yes, folks, this was the smallest of all the tribes of Israel, the tribe of Benjamin. The tribe of Benjamin would also be the one who would remain faithful to God and would be brought into the tribe of Judah when the nation was divided into 2 sections. Okay? Does anybody know another tribe that remained loyal with Judah at that time? Nobody? It's the tribe of Levi. Yes, the Levites would remain faithful unto God as well at that particular time. Turn over in your Bibles to Judges 20, verse 16. Somebody read Judges 20, verse 16. There's an interesting statement made about these Benjamites. Nobody going to read it for me?
Among all this people, there were 700 chosen men left-handed. Everyone could sling stones at an hairbreadth and not miss.
There you go. Folks, he's talking about the tribe of Benjamin. He says that there were 700 men that were chosen, and they were left-handed. Okay, 700 left-handed men. And guess what they could do? They could sling a stone at a what? At a hair's breadth. Okay? Folks, if they wanted to hit you between the eyes, guess what? They would not miss. Okay? They would hit you right between the eyes. They were left-handers, okay? Southpaws. And guess what? Yay, there we go. And they were relied upon heavily by Israel when it came to time of battle because of this ability that they had, especially to use these slings and take people in battle. So just an interesting little point about these individuals. When he came, there were two things the Bible says about him. His clothes were rent and earth was upon his head. What does that signify? What is it? Yes, it symbolizes deep, deep grief and sorrow of an individual. The deep grief and sorrow. Clark in his commentary says this: the clothes rent signify the rending, dividing, and scattering of the people in battle. The earth or ashes on the head signified their humiliation. Okay, total, complete defeat and humiliation in battle. There's many examples of individuals who rend their clothes and who put earth on their head. Jacob, Joshua and the elders of Israel, and also Tamar. We have Job. Wasn't that the way he was? He had placed ashes upon his head in deep grief when he was smitten by God, or smitten of Satan with all of his afflictions. So numerous examples of individuals who were in deep sorrow, grief, and humiliation. And this time it was because of being defeated in battle. Okay? For what did Eli tremble? The Ark of God. Yes, the Bible says in verse 13, and when he came, lo, Eli sat upon a seat by the wayside watching, for his heart trembled for the Ark of God. His heart trembled for the Ark of God. Guys, does that tell you anything about Eli? Anything about Eli?
He knew what was right.
Okay, he knew what was right. Okay. What's that?
It was a treasure to him.
Okay. Yeah, who was the main man responsible for all of the articles of the temple in Israel? Guys, it was the high priest. Who was the high priest? Eli. Okay? And so he knew that I'm extremely responsible about it. Again, do we see a man in Eli who's conflicted? Does it seem like? Seems like he's conflicted, doesn't he? Okay? He knows God. He loves God. He appreciates God. He appreciates, like right now, the Ark of God. He's deeply concerned about it. And yet, there's the other side, isn't there? Okay? The other side of him is that he's not a disciplinarian when it comes to being a father. And even now, he has allowed the Ark of God to leave the city of Shiloh and be out there on the field of battle out of his presence. Guys, this may have been the very first time ever that this ark had been out of Eli's presence as the high priest. And because of that, his heart trembles. Okay? Like Larry said, he knew what was right. He knew what should be done, and yet he's not following it all the time. Okay? Just kind of an interesting individual by the name of Eli. We're going to come back to him in a little while, and I'll read a comment somebody made about him and just see what you think about it. What does the word tremble mean? Fear. Fearful, afraid. Yes, it's translated elsewhere in Scripture with the simple word afraid. Guys, he was scared for the ark, wasn't he? Okay? He had absolutely no clue what might happen to it. Question, has Israel already been defeated once in this battle? Yeah. Okay? Folks, the very reason the ark is out there is because they'd already been beaten. In the first skirmish, 4,000 men had died on the field of battle. They came to Shiloh, they grabbed the ark, out it goes. Who in their right mind would take the ark of God back onto the field of battle after he'd been defeated by the enemy? He's fearful of what's going to happen to the ark. What did the city do when the messenger reported this news of the battle? Yes, it says they cried out, and when the man came into the city and told it, all the city cried out. I made a point right here. There is a figure of speech being used in Scripture. We don't even think about this stuff when we read the biblical text. We just read it because we understand it, and we don't ever really stop to think about it. There's a figure of speech that's here. Okay? Guys, what is a city? What is it? Can a city exist without any people? You could take all the people of Jacksonville and you could just get them out of here, and guess what? There'd still be a city here, wouldn't there? Okay, the city is the buildings and the roads and all, but sometimes, though, we use figures of speeches, okay? And the figure of speech is, the city cried out, referring to what? The inhabitants of the city. A figure of speech is being used in Scripture, and we don't think about it. Does anybody know what kind of figure of speech you ought to? Because we had a whole class on this about 10 years ago. Okay, that was about 2 years ago we had a class on this, didn't we? Figures of speech of the Bible. Guys, it's referred to as a metonymy. A metonymy. And a metonymy is when you use one word that is associated with another word. Are people associated with cities? Yes, people live in cities. And so he's put the city for the people. The city didn't cry out. The inhabitants of the city cried out. But the two are so closely connected that you can use them interchangeably, and we understand it, don't we? Okay? The only reason I bring that up is just two reasons. One, to review, to see if you really paid attention 2 years ago. Okay? And but just to show you, sometimes we got to stop and kind of think about the text and see what's really going on. Okay? True or false? Eli did not want to know about the tumult of the noise. False. He did want to know, didn't he? The Bible says, and when Eli heard the noise of the crying, he said, what meaneth the noise of this tumult? He wanted to know. I find that's interesting. Okay? What personal facts do we learn about Eli from 1 Samuel 4, verse 15, though? His age, how old? 98. Older than some in his audience. Some. And he was what? He was blind. Yes. Guys, the word dim literally means set. S-E-T, set. And seems to express the fixed state of the blind eye. Okay? So here he was, 98 years old, and could not see. Is that a pretty old man? Does being blind cause some complications? Big complications, doesn't it? Okay? But we have some more description about, what else do we know about Eli as far as his physical?
He was heavy.
Yeah, he was heavy. He was a big man as well, wasn't he? Okay, so he's got a lot of things going wrong for him. Okay? Old, fat, and can't see. Okay? The only thing can happen worse is be dead. And that may happen here in a minute, mightn't it? What four things did the messenger report unto Eli about the battle? Number one. Yes, Israel fled. Guys, the people of God don't flee. Okay? That is not something the people of God are supposed to do. And yet, even if that was the only message, the children of Israel have fled from the field of battle. That would have been horrible. But secondly, what happened? A great slaughter has occurred. And we'll find out how many before too long, will we not? So not only have many of them run from the battle, there are many of them who have died upon the field of battle. Now remember, who's talking to who? The messenger is talking to Eli. Okay? So he learns Israel's fled. He's learned that many of the soldiers have died on the field of battle. Number three, his sons have died. And then fourthly, the Ark of God is taken. Guys, each part of the message grows continually worse, doesn't it? Not good to flee, horrible to lose people in battle. Now I've lost my 2 sons, and now the very thing that I am in charge of as far as God is concerned, part of my most important responsibility to take care of the ark, now it is in the hands of the enemy. It just gets worse and worse and worse. Which part of the report caused Eli to fall off his seat backward? The Ark of God has taken. And it came to pass, when he made mention of the Ark of God, he fell off the seat backward by the side of the gate. Wow. Yes, sir.
You know, the Philistines were afraid of the ark, but they apparently had no problem taking the ark back to their capital.
That was like a what? They were scared of the ark because they thought it manifested some great power on behalf of Israel. But guys, once you get to the field of battle and you've whooped the enemy, what does that tell you about the ark? It must not be as powerful as what Israel thinks it is, and so you steal it as a what? Yeah, as a trophy, as a souvenir, don't you? And they did. I wrote down some things about Eli. I said this was Eli's greatest fear. The ark had been taken, number 1, without the authorization of God. Folks, we don't find anywhere in this particular section where they consulted God with what needed to be done. Is that always a problem? Folks, that's a huge problem. Before we do anything, the very first thing we need to do is sit down and consult with God. What does God say about this? You see, sometimes individuals don't care what God says. Or, well, maybe they do. In their mind they do, but rather than consulting God, they just go ahead, don't they? This sounds like a good plan. It sounds like it'll work. It sounds like it'll be fine. My emotions are all for it. Folks, it doesn't mean that you're going to be moving with God's approval. Secondly, now the ark is out of Eli's sight. And he thinks what? Possibly forever, isn't it? Okay? Now we don't have the very thing that contains the very presence of God in Israel anymore. It's gone. Who's talking? There he is. Yes, sir.
Could it be that Eli fell over not only for the missing ark, but he feared the wrath of God as well?
I don't know. It doesn't say. You know, it just says that when he heard it, that's when he fell off his seat. He probably had no clue what was going to happen, you know, as far as what God was going to do and things. Jim?
The same way Eli lit this ark so out for the purpose that it was an example. To me, you take it in as using it as an idol, to bring it into battle, to inspire the people to fight more. It's not what the ark is designed to do.
And this is something that's interesting, guys, because we studied this 2 or 3 weeks ago. Had the ark ever gone to battle? Yeah. The ark had gone to battle in times past. Okay? When the children of Israel were going through the wilderness, the ark was in the forefront all the time, was it not? Okay? There was one time that Israel lost a battle because they didn't bring the ark to the battle. Okay? And see, this is where we go back to what? Ask God. Ask God what He wants. If He wants the ark, then you what? You take the ark. If He doesn't want the ark, then guess what? You leave the ark behind. They didn't consult God. And that's the key to this whole thing. And that's the problem with mankind today. They just refuse to consult God. Okay? What about Eli's death? Broke his neck. Wow. I don't guess you have to be up too high, do you, to fall off your seat and break your neck? Okay? But it makes me wonder how high that seat was. Okay? But he falls off and breaks his neck. But remember, he's what? He's very heavy. And old. And so Now, I told you we were going to come back to Eli, and I was going to read you a comment somebody made about Eli. Okay, guys? There is no answer to this question, okay? No answer to this question. But let me read. This comes from a commentator. He says this. But what shall we say about this man? However remiss in the education of his children, and criminal in his indulgence toward his profligate sons, which arose more from the easiness of his disposition than from a desire to encourage vice, is gone to perdition? God forbid. No man ever died with such benevolence and religious feelings and yet perished. So in other words, what did he just say? He's wondering whether Eli died lost or whether Eli died saved. Now guys, the Bible doesn't say, does it? But what does he say? Listen to this statement again. And this is the reason I read that is because this is the way many individuals believe today. He says, is he gone to perdition? Is he lost? God forbid, he says. No man ever died with such benevolence and religious feelings and yet perished. How does he know that? How does he know that? Guys, religious feelings and benevolence, that's not all there is to man's salvation. Just because you feel good about religion and you feel good about God, and just because you do some good things, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be a saved person in the last day. Did Eli have deeper responsibilities than that? What was the very reason God was bringing judgment upon his priesthood to begin with? Because he was in violation of what God desired when it came to the sacrifices and what was going on in Israel. This man very well may have died in a lost condition before God because of what's gone on in Israel. And now God brings his judgment upon him in the capture of this ark, doesn't he? And now Eli, along with his sons, has died. For he was a blank man and blank, old and heavy and dead, is where he is now. Could Eli have stopped all this? I heard one, yep, that's all I heard. Could Eli have stopped this?
Not the age.
Huh?
Not the age.
No, he couldn't stop his aging and the blind, but could he have stopped all this that's going on? Yeah. Folks, if he'd have stepped up to his position as he should have as the high priest, he is like the president of the United States. That's where his authority is in Israel at this particular time. He is the dominant force. He is the one who can make decisions about anything that goes on in the nation of Israel. They don't have a what yet? They don't have a king. And not only is he high priest, he's judge of Israel as well. He could have stopped every bit of this. Have there been a lot of things that have gone bad in churches and other places where leadership could have stopped all of that? Yeah. You see, folks, if leadership doesn't step up to their responsibility, and if they don't carry out what they're supposed to do as God's chosen, as God's ordained, then bad things can happen in nations, in churches. You see, that's where you've got to have good, strong leadership. And if you don't, there can be some pretty bad problems. How long did Eli judge Israel? 40 years. Now I want you to stop a minute. How old is he when he died? 98 minus 40 equals 58. He didn't become a judge in Israel until he was 58. Okay? That's how old I is. Okay? That's when he became a judge. Now, as to exactly how old he was when he assumed the position of high priest, I don't know. The Bible doesn't say. But he occupied some pretty high positions in the nation of Israel, didn't he? Okay? And sometimes we don't stop to think about a person's age and when they did certain things, okay? Can individuals do great things when they become older in life? Yes. In fact, There have been many wonderful leaders who didn't even step into the position of leadership until over 60 years old. Wonderful leaders who are older. You see, so oftentimes today what we do is we allow age to become an excuse rather than an opportunity. You know it? Is there good things about being older? Yeah. Wisdom, experience, the knowledge that you have, right? The abilities that you've been given to be involved with other people. Okay? There's wonderful things that are there. And sometimes what we do, we get to a certain age, I'm stopping, let the young guys have it. That may not be good. Okay? That may not be good. So Eli was an older man when he started his leadership in the nation of Israel. Whose wife was pregnant at the time of the battle? Phinehas. Folks, seems like there's a lot of good things happening in Eli's household, right? Got 2 sons, they're married, and now we got one of them who's pregnant, going to have a baby. Oh boy, everything's great. Isn't it? Man. Here's what I wrote. Phinehas' wife was pregnant at this time. Sadly, she was going to become another victim because of the disgrace that had come upon Israel. Who would have thought it? Who would have thought that that day Phinehas' wife would have waked up and what would have happened by the end of the day? Who would have thought that? I doubt she did. What 2 news items caused her to go into labor? Yes. The first thing was what? And when she heard the tidings that the ark was taken and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she bowed herself and travailed, and her pain came upon her. Can stress cause women to go into labor? Oh yes. They can cause women to go into labor. Some women try to finally stress themselves out enough to go into labor, don't they? There's a lady right across the street over here when she was pregnant. One day I opened the church door. She was out there walking. I said, "What you doing?" She said, "I'm trying to get this baby to come." She did everything she could do to get that baby to come. So stress, putting a little stress on an individual can bring labor, and that's what happened to this lady. She gave birth to a son or daughter. To a son. Think about that, folks. Eli, Phinehas, and now who? Phinehas' son. Never named that we know. Yes, we do, don't we? Ichabod. Could have become what? High priest of Israel. And now what? Both are dead. In fact, all 3 eventually will die, won't they? We never hear of Ichabod becoming high priest. Just interesting. Notice if he were the firstborn, then guess what? There should have been great joy, should there not? If this was Phinehas' first son, should there have been joy in the household at this time? Yeah, my first son, my lineage, my legacy is right here. But what was about to happen to Phinehas' wife? She was about to die. What did the women tell her not to do when they found out that this was a boy? Fear not, right? Fear not. You have a what? You have a son. How did she react? But she answered not, neither did she regard it. Not a word said. Because they're trying to cheer this lady up. They know this woman is in bad distress right now. Some horrible news has come to her. It's thrown her into delivering a child. The child is now delivered. It's a son. And guess what? They're trying to do everything they can do to try to comfort this woman and try to hold on to life, aren't they? And when she hears that it's a son, guess what? Doesn't faze her at all. I wrote these things down. She was about to die. She would never be able to care for her child. The child would never know his mother. Her husband was dead. The child would not know his father. Her father-in-law was dead. The child would not know his grandfather. And the Ark of God was captured by the Philistines. What was there to smile about? Who cares if I've been given a son? The circumstances are horrible, aren't they? You know, guys, sometimes good news doesn't what? Good news doesn't cheer the heart. Okay, because things are just too bad. And right now, things are that bad in Israel. I find it interesting that she does cry out and give a name to this child, doesn't she? What does she call him? Ichabod. What do you want to name your child? Ichabod. Remember, names in Israel have what? Meaning. Okay? And this name has a meaning. Strong says that it means no glory. Inglorious. Wow. Now remember, they run over to her. You've got a son. You've got a son. If it's the firstborn, it ought to be a glorious thing. She says, name him Ichabod. No glory. Wow. Clark says that it's really a question. And the question is this: where is the glory? Wow. Unbelievable. How was the glory departed from Israel, folks?
The ark was no longer in Israel.
That's exactly right, saying the glory is departed from Israel because the Ark of God was taken, and because her father-in-law and her husband. And she said, the glory is departed from Israel, for the Ark of God is taken. We don't know anything about Phinehas's wife except for what is said right here, folks. Okay? It's the only thing we know about Phinehas's wife. Tell me what you learn about her. Anything? Do you learn anything about this woman?
Believer in God.
Okay, she's a believer in God. Okay? She's married to the high priest's son, isn't she? Okay? Pretty important position to be in. Okay? What else do we know? She what?
She loved her family.
She loved her family. Yes, she has now a husband and a father-in-law who has died, and that is a part of her grief, isn't it? So she has a relationship with these two men. What else, Michael?
She's not a very happy person.
She's not a very happy person. At least not at this hour, is she? Okay?
She understood what was really important in terms of the context of life. You know, when she said this ark is gone. You know, nothing else really matters if God is not appeased or obeyed, and scarcely anything matters.
Yeah.
She understood that.
It's amazing, isn't it? Deep down, see, and this is the thing about Israel, and a good lesson. Guys, it's easy to have a knowledge of something, and yet, even though you have the knowledge of it, to not practice it. Okay? Now, women didn't hold as an important of a position in the nation as men did at that particular day. They were the ones in charge, weren't they, the men at that time? And so she probably didn't have a lot of influence other than whatever influence a wife could have on a husband in what they were doing, okay? But she did. She recognized that this ark is the place of God, isn't it? And now she recognizes that this ark is no longer where? It's no longer with us. The glory of Israel, everything that we trust in, everything that we put our hopes in, has now what? Has now departed. It's not here anymore. I find it interesting that troubled her more than the birth of a son brought her joy. Isn't that something? Think about that. The taking of the ark brought her more sorrow than the birth of a son brought her joy. Absolutely. Huh? What killed her? I don't know what the actual cause of it was. Very violent and stressful childbirth, wasn't it? Childbirth, guys, is still a very dangerous time. We act like it's so easy nowadays, and the reality is that childbirth, period, is a very stressful time, isn't it? And now when you throw all this kind of stress upon it, I'd just like to know Phinehas's wife. The reason I bring her up, I'd like to know her. I'd like to talk to her a little bit more, okay? Sometimes bad men were married to good women, weren't they? Give me an example of that. Can you think of anybody?
I have a hard time calling her name, but the woman who met David on the road and her husband was the grouchy guy and wouldn't give him any food. Abigail.
There you go. Yes. Abigail was married to Nabal, right? The fool was married to a woman who was beautiful inside and out, wasn't she? And sometimes the woman, because of her position, just could not influence the husband to be positive, okay? She just didn't have the power to do that. But given the opportunity to shine like Phinehas's wife does here, she at least has a deep understanding of what this ark is, what the taking of this ark means to Israel, and even her reaction to the whole situation. You know, it brings her deep grief, and ultimately she dies from this particular event. Just love to talk to Phinehas's wife, know more about her. Okay, how many times do we read that about the Ark of God in this section? 6 times, folks. Verse 13, for his heart trembled for the Ark of God. Verse 17, and the Ark of God is taken. Verse 18, when he made mention of the Ark of God. Verse 19, when she heard the tidings that the Ark of God was taken. Verse 21, because the Ark of God was taken. Verse 22, for the Ark of God was taken. What do you think is the subject of these verses? The Ark of God, folks. If that's all you titled this section, it is the Ark of God. Who's got it in their possession right now? The Philistines. Who are the Philistines? They're the enemy, the evil enemy of Israel. And now they're rejoicing, are they not? And they're going to take this ark back home with them. And it's going to be a lovely situation. And so next week, read chapter 5 and see what happens. Now, I want you to know something. We're going to cover a whole chapter in one study next week. That is a miracle for Victor Eskew. Okay. We're going to cover a whole chapter. Tonight, we're going to be studying about miracles. And I was telling Larry and June, I was doing some reading and some